true potential. Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the 5G Hub speaker series on 5G for AR and VR. My name is Erin Rainey, and I lead the Tech Experience program here at T-Mobile, and we are excited to host you here at the 5G Hub for such a fun topic. So 5G is going to elevate extended and mixed reality for AR and VR services. And this is across a variety of applications for both consumer and enterprises, whether it's entertainment, gaming, education, remote support, just to name a few. And today we are going to talk about how 5G is going to take the AR and VR that we have today to a whole new level. We're going to talk about the ecosystem required to make that happen, and we're going to get a little glimpse into what that future reality may look like. So let's get started, and let's welcome our panelists out on stage. Welcome. All right, you guys are in for a treat. We have some incredible panelists here with us today. So I'm going to start with a few brief introductions. So first we have Mischa Dohler, who is Chief Architect at Ericsson, working on cutting-edge topics of 6G, metaverse, XR, quantum, and blockchain. He serves on the Technical Advisory Committee of the FCC and on the Spectrum Advisory Board of Ofcom. He is a fellow of the IEEE, the Royal Academy of Engineering, the Royal Society of Arts, the Institution of Engineering and Technology, and a distinguished member of the Harvard Square Leaders Excellence. Wow, welcome, Mischa. Thank you for joining us. Next, we have Patrick Costello, Senior Director of Business Development at Qualcomm. He is responsible for building partnerships with strategic partners in the sports and entertainment verticals. In support of Qualcomm's XR business, Patrick leads North American engagements with film studios, sports leagues, OEMs, and ISVs to drive both content partnerships and adoption of Qualcomm's broader technology portfolio. Prior to joining Qualcomm, Patrick led business development for Kyocera Wireless in emerging markets across the globe. Welcome, Patrick. And then, of course, we have our very own Nigel NewbyHouse, who is Senior Director of 5G Consumer Products and Innovation here at T-Mobile. His team is tasked to uncover and shape the next wave of consumer products and experiences that harness the power of T-Mobile's industry-leading 5G network. Throughout his career, Nigel has worked on an array of cellular products, from the very first cell phones and ultra-thin notebooks to today's cutting-edge augmented and virtual reality products. His team stays busy ideating progressive visions with major industry partners that put T-Mobile at the center of physical and digital experience. Thank you all for being here today. All right, so we're going to go.
First pro tip, never get introduced after Mischa if you're
Yeah, we'll remember that for next time.
What the hell is she going to say about my education?
All right, so Howard, I'm going to ask a few questions of our panelists, and then I'm going to turn it over to our audience, so you guys get your questions ready. Okay, so we'll just start off with the topic for today. How will 5G change AR and VR solutions? And maybe share what you're most excited for.
Well, I'm excited for the ability of 5G being able to offer immediacy and, let's say immersion, so really new high levels of details of graphics experience, being a platform which is fairly generic actually to address both VR and AR and other mixed reality use cases. So we've been working very hard over the last 10 years to make sure this is a fantastic enterprise proposition, but also a fantastic consumer proposition down the road. So that's a high level. We can deep dive into technologies, but I'm keen to hear what my colleagues have to say.
I think for us, with such a big focus on 5G, and XR is such a latency-sensitive use case, right? So it's really a perfect use case to showcase 5G. So we spent a lot of time trying to figure out, thinking ahead to what that perfect as you can get kind of end device state looks like, and then working backwards. So a ton of time spent on 5G optimizations, In dynamic RF environments, anything like interference or blockage or motion, how that affects latency peaks and valleys, and how to smooth those out so that we can get those latencies really where they need to be for the XR use case.
Awesome. Nigel?
Yeah, I'm most excited, I think, about what 5G can bring to the hardware and the form factors that we've all seen develop over the past few years. They're still kind of generally big and clunky and weighty and power hungry. And I think what's exciting for me is how 5G technology and all the performances that we have on throughput and latency can maybe drive down some of the economics that we're encumbered with today on the hardware and make things smaller, lighter, more efficient, less power hungry. And altogether scalable, and allow more and more people to see the beauty of some of these new experiences that we can enable.
Excellent. I'd like to hear maybe a little bit about, since we've launched 5G, we're still early days, but what have we already seen advance when it comes to XR applications, and what do we anticipate is going to be next?
I go
Mischa?
first.
You can go first.
Right. We're in the early days, as you say. So, from an engineering point of view, we not necessarily think about, 5G, 4G, and all that. We think in releases, right? So it's a very complex process to upgrade the infrastructure. So we're currently, in the very early releases of 5G. And even like that, we see, the latency have gone down really significantly. The bandwidth has gone up significantly, which is really great. Power consumption has gone down significantly, which I think is very important to you and everybody else. From an XR point of view, of course, we need the breakthrough always comes with the triptych. You need three things. You need the network, you need the devices, and you need the applications. So you need all three things together. It doesn't come alone. So I think we have done our gig. Networks up and running. Now we're waiting for devices to really scale up to get it to the point where they are cheap, and then we need the applications. And I think in the next 12 to 24 months, we will hear some really exciting news coming out of new devices, new applications, and this will be really the big moment for us. We'll see whether the networks we've been designing for years will be ready for purpose, and but I'm very hopeful. We've tested a lot of things. I see there's a lot of stuff happening here, which I'm super excited about. I want to test a lot of things later. But yeah, so we're doing the very first baby steps. Please do remember that. And I think, in the next 5 to 10 years, we will see a consolidation of this really new three-dimensional internet we are building. And I think we're all very excited about it.
I love how you said the network's ready.
Yeah. Okay.
That's important. Patrick?
There's one network that's ready.
Yes.
I think, when I think about sort of our enablement role and what we're doing to enable devices, right? In VR, we've already integrated 5G antennas in all-in-one VR reference hardware. So it's a very complex task. We have, I think, eight sub-6 antennas in there, 3mm wave antennas in there, other Wi-Fi antennas in there. So to put all that in to a limited physical space with the proper power and thermals is really exciting. We hope to see those commercial devices now following in the next 12, 24 months. On the AR side, we're taking more of a distributed processing approach where we're bringing the smartphone into the equation so that we can deploy it commercially now. So the viewers will wirelessly connect to the host compute through the smartphone or puck or computer, and then use 5G to go out to the network there. So I think we're at a point now where we can bring 5G into the discussion now with commercial partners.
Excellent. Nigel?
Yeah, gains that I've been particularly inspired around is actually although for my job I'm focused on consumer applications for AR, VR, which is maybe a little bit kind of tougher to see some of the early wins there beyond gaming, which obviously started to get some traction there. But one of the spaces where I've actually been super inspired to see progress is in healthcare. And there's a company I worked with in the past called Penumbra Healthcare Systems, and they're doing like stroke rehabilitation for stroke patients, and being able to provide healthcare services for people who maybe typically can't get to, they might be in remote locations, and typically can't get to see the healthcare providers as frequently as maybe the real progress they could make on their rehab would demand more frequent trips to doctors and physiotherapists and things like that, and be able to see people conduct physiotherapy remotely, and then with all the eye tracking and hand tracking that you get, be able to get metrics around people's mobility on various parts of their body. I mean, for an industry that is typically encumbered by process and bureaucracy approvals, to be able to see an industry like that start to embrace that technology. I find that profoundly inspiring, actually.
Sure.
Yeah, they're actually doing like surgery assist now with HoloLens and other devices. They're doing real surgeries with AR devices now in operating rooms.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great example. I'd love to hear, are there other industries or verticals that you guys think are going to have some of the biggest impacts or benefits when it comes to?
We always try to come up with these killer apps, right? So what's going to be the next big thing? But if you think about it, we really want to build an internet, a wireless internet. And you will struggle, if I asked you now as an audience, what's the killer app of the internet? You would know. And I think that's the right thing to say, because we really would like 5G to be able to service everything we can think of. Everything you do with the internet, you want this untethered, on the run, outdoors, indoors. So therefore, to get this really nailed down as one thing, I think is difficult. But we do baby steps, right? So I think healthcare, and I agree with you, it's fascinating that such a conservative industry woke up and said, hey, we can train our students, we can do so much more. And I was at King's College before, working with all our surgeons on that. So this is awakening, transport is awakening, gaming is waking up. What else, which other industries? Everything related to digital twinning, I think, is quite important, because we need edge cloud rendering to get the high level of detail. And I think people want high level of graphics detail now. Otherwise, it will be boring. They want stuff which really kind of gets them excited. So I think we need the edge cloud rendering, need to make sure get the architectures right. So that's a little bit our thinking at the moment. Yep.
Yeah, I'll maybe give a shout out to another partner. I really like what Niantic's doing in this space. I mean, I think their whole mission is to get people outside and playing, and they've integrated AR in a very seamless way into their gameplay experience. But you're holding up a device to have that experience today, so it's a perfect transition to a head-worn form factor. You're outside; it could bring 5G into the equation, and it's just a great way to go hands-free and have a lot of fun outside.
Okay, great. Yeah, maybe we can talk a little bit more about HMDs and kind of where we're at. And it sounds like that 1 to 2 year time frame is kind of where we think we're going to be. What are still some of the limitations and challenges that we have when it comes to those types of devices?
You're the expert.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm looking at you.
We're all looking at you, Patrick.
So, I mean, it really is an extremely complex problem that the industry is trying to solve, right? So if we think about kind of the holy grail device of 5G connected to the cloud AR glass that is maybe below 60 grams in weight, comfortable, fashionable, can do user sensing, can do environmental sensing, all within a power profile of like about a watt of power, with full AR immersive experiences. There's natural limitations and constraints to that device type, right? So then you need the network, and you need 5G to come in to be ready to handle that workload offload on the network. So I think in the optics and display an optical engine is such a challenging problem that the industry really needs to solve. So it's there's a lot that has to happen, but what's so great about working within this ecosystem and just seeing the focus and resolve and commitment from everyone across the industry who really believes that that's where we're going. Unless you believe that the smartphone in its current iteration is like the final evolution of human computing, then we're going to be going somewhere else, and we're really, I think, aligned that this is where we're going. Yeah.
I kind of think something we've been talking about in our team is this notion of snackable content versus long-form content. And I think one of the things, certainly coming from my background in the cell phone business, we spent years trying to get talk time longer and longer and longer on people's phones. And I think if you fall into that way of thinking in XR, potentially it's dangerous, and you just kind of end up the bar always just stays at quite a high level. But I think if you change the way you think about the type of experiences, and I often use TikTok as an example for how the short form content rich short form experiences have kind of disrupted the social media network. And if we start to think a little bit differently about the performance requirements and the usage patterns that we expect to yield value in this space, that maybe this idea that it has to have a 1,000 milliamp hour battery strapped to the back of it, maybe that kind of goes away. And actually, if it's multiple times a day, but short form, 30-second, 45-second. So the experiences are measured in seconds and minutes rather than measured in minutes and hours. I think that could potentially change the way we start to think about the HMDs themselves.
So we talked a lot about the device and the network, and I think there's lots that has to happen within the device space. But one question that did come through was talking about edge compute. And whether device, the core, the cloud, kind of the different locations for that, and I think that how that plays into this ecosystem. We should maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we have been thinking about edge compute for a very long time, and I maintain it's a really exciting opportunity for the entire ecosystem, though it's very challenging to implement. So from an opportunity point of view, so we did some analysis and we found that power consumption actually goes down by a factor of 7. So it's almost an order of magnitude if you start offloading things to the edge cloud. Factor 10 is important because it means maybe before you can do 30 seconds, now you can do 10 times 30 seconds. You do the math for me, please. Okay, so but we're talking about an hour. You can do 10 hours, or something which costs maybe $500 suddenly costs only $200. So edge cloud is hugely important. But it is very challenging because we're still not quite sure on how to do the split rendering or the offloading, entire offloading. On paper, we know how to do it. We know how to build prototyping, but the devil is in the detail. And of course, we want to do something which works everywhere, right? So we want you to buy these devices maybe here in the US, SIM card maybe in Europe, and call your friends who are maybe in Africa whilst you're hiking in South America. We really want this to work globally as a proposition, and we need to sort out a lot of challenges in terms of handovers, not only horizontal but also vertical, because you want to make sure you come home, it goes on Wi-Fi, you go off, it goes off Wi-Fi, it all works really well. You want to have that really full experience there. We have loads of challenges, also from a regulatory point of view. Maybe we can talk about this, in a bit later today if we have time. But it's also related to edge cloud. So it's an exciting technology proposition which has been coming along for quite a few years now. We have opened the bottle of wine maybe 5 years ago, but it still needs to ripe a little bit. But once it's out there and it works, I think it will be fascinating. You'll be able to experience things which, even today on a heavyweight GPU machine you have at home, forget about it. You will have stuff which will be really cutting edge. You can do, extremely high-level rendered games. You can have a digital twinning and overlay. I could have AR glasses, which I don't like the color of the chairs. I just re-render them in real time, and they would understand I'm actually doing this spatially anchored with a spatial memory. It's a future which is actually really exciting. So we need that edge cloud to work. Any engineers in the room, please help us to make that happen. And I have to say, Qualcomm is really, really central and instrumental in really helping us to do that. And Ericsson, of course, tries to do their bit. You do your bit. We're on it. We're on it. It will happen.
Excellent.
Patrick? I'll just make one comment, and then I'll kick it over to the network guy. But obviously, MEC is going to be hugely important for the whole chain. Our vision, though, is that we really need kind of a dynamic distributed processing model going forward for the user. So when we want to offload, we want the architecture to recognize where the best place for the offload is based on user proximity, based on the needs of the user, based on available compute, where they are. MEC is always going to be probably the centralized role in that, but it could be a host compute device near the user. It could be within a private 5G network with local compute on-prem. It could be the MEC. But I think we need a transparent and seamless model for the user so that host compute offload is dynamic and seamless for the user.
Yeah, it's my catch-all. When someone comes to me with a major problem, I just say, it's edge compute. That's going to solve it. So, no, I'm not the network guy, as Patrick flatters me by saying that. Mischa will talk way more eloquently than I can on that one. But certainly, we have high hopes that the position of the carrier in this space and our proximity to the customer and paradigms like edge compute technologies can dramatically, as I mentioned earlier on, can dramatically change the profile of the form factor and type of devices that people consume this content on and make it accessible as if it was a wired experience, as if we had a PC with a high-powered GPU just 6 feet away from me with an HDMI cable. Our goal is to be able to replicate that type of quality and that type of resolution in a fully mobile environment. I mean, that's the goal, and it's something that we, as the nation's premium 5G carrier, believe we're in a great position to start to look at those new archetypes.
I'm going to ask one more question, then I'm going to turn it over to the audience so you guys get your questions ready. So one question that came in, and you mentioned Wi-Fi a little bit earlier, is does VR HMDs really need cellular, or is Wi-Fi good enough? I'm not going to answer this question.
I have an answer, but I want to hear what Patrick has to say.
We always need more 5G.
I mean, I'll fill in. I'll fill in.
I'll say that there's a new use case that we're enabling now called MR, right? So this is taking stereo color cameras and passing through the video feed into a VR HMD. So you're opening up the outside world in a much larger field of view now. So VR isn't necessarily just for indoors anymore. There's going to be other use cases that are enabled. And I think if we want to build in mobility as part of the use case, then I think we're going to need 5G.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I won't mention who the customer was, but in a previous life of mine, there was a big petrochemical company that was building, facilities in VR to be able to walk through and do testing, and they built their own VR center to be able to walk execs and employees through these environments, and they were finding that the more polygons there were in these models and the higher resolution they wanted on these models and the more people they wanted to simultaneously experience these environments, the Wi-Fi was breaking down for them, and they were looking at private 5G solutions. So I think there are pressure test use cases that are showing that once we get to a certain threshold, a certain expectation of quality and resolution, that the potential of 5G with its latency and throughput has the ability to serve in a more managed way these experiences to a higher level of quality.
I think there are quite a few use cases, really interesting use cases where you have VR on the road. Okay, because we think, of course, indoors, and we as an industry actually do like Wi-Fi because it really spurns demand. Anything which has succeeded in the mobile world first succeeded in the indoor Wi-Fi world, right? And but the use cases we are thinking of is think of a commute. I lived in London for many years. I know you did as well, and it can be quite tedious to sit in the underground or sit on the train or whatever you do. And imagine now new devices. We've seen new devices coming out soon, which would allow you to work literally in your VR little world. And now suddenly you are maybe on the train in a physically fairly safe environment, and you're driving with maybe 20,000 people on this train, and you're doing your work in a way you haven't done before. And then you extrapolate that to cars. So, there's a company in Munich, interestingly, which offers an experience for kids or for any of the co-pilots to put on the VR headset. It understands spatially where you are with the car. It anchors that in real time. So rather than showing the real road with the real buildings and the real street furniture, it does the extrapolation into a game in real time and essentially gamifies the entire experience of driving. Of course, the driver can't do it because he or she needs to pay attention to the road. But I think this is so exciting. You're fully immersed. It helps with the sickness some people experience because you anchor that with the real movement of the car. And I think, once this takes off, I think, everybody will want to drive in cars and public transport, if you ask me, rather than sitting at home and, doing boring work in a sense. They really want to be out there and experience that. So, therefore, I think we can open up a bit our mind on VR 5G on the road. To be confirmed. I can't really see the crystal ball, but I think that could be something people would use. Why don't we ask the audience? I mean, who of you would put on a VR headset and play a game on the road whilst somebody drives for you, or work on a train, commuter train, whilst taking the train? Okay, I want to see some hands. It's not too bad. You've got your business case. Here you go, right? Work out the ARPU and we're in game here.
There you go.
Excellent. All right.
I think just even removing the friction to the entry point is hugely valuable. Yes, it can provide the latency and the throughput, but just imagine if every time you picked up your phone, you had to search for a network, select a network, tap in a password. I mean, we
Sure.
need to make these experiences as low friction as they possibly can be to enable access to them to more and more people. So I just think that that ability to just power on and go that we have on our phones today, and we, has driven up the adoption of cell phones into everybody's lives today. I think that is where we need to get to with these new experiences as well. And cellular has its role to play there too.
I think there's a real argument too for like multi-user location-based experiences with private 5G networks. You can probably have a much better experience in those type of deployments with 5G.
Great. All right, so let's see, does our audience have any questions? Oh, we got one. You want to walk up and just speak into the mic?
Yeah, so my question is about edge. I can't quite figure it out because there's two scenarios, right? There's things that need to live in the cloud, and then there are things that are extremely low latency, like rendering, that probably need to live in your pocket. And if you look at how much progress the cell phone companies have made in terms of putting incredible amounts of compute power in your pocket, it seems like the logical place to do the rendering would be on the mobile device and not on the edge cloud. And so I can't quite figure out what's the use case for that. I get public cloud, I get proximate cloud, like regional metro area, 10 millisecond or less latency. But is it really possible to do like real-time rendering on edge cloud over 5G and have the customer not get nauseated rather than doing it on their iPhone or Android phone?
Yeah, can I take that? Is that right?
I'll just maybe talk about some of the KPIs that we're seeing sort of on the R&D side that have been made public. So, I mean, we look at the importance of latencies, right? So what we've kind of figured out is that at 90 frames per second, if 1% of those frames have latency peaks, right, then that translates into a bad user or a poor user experience about every second. So what we did in our network back in San Diego with emulated 5G data, I think sub-6 and Wi-Fi, sent the round trip M2R to motion to photon to render to photon latency is about 70 milliseconds now, with about 20 milliseconds of that being the 5G round trip time. So I think if the latency critical applications, we're continuing to work on that, and with the optimizations that we have in the modem, we're seeing that I think you can use the MEC as far as the use case.
So you can do it, but the question is whether we should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great question. And particularly, I'm not sure how much you follow the rendering industry. Unreal Engine has released, Unreal Engine 5 January this year. They're using Nana. It's a completely new way of rendering graphics. So in theory, you're right. We can do a lot of stuff now on the device. Now, it turns out when you go specifically AR devices, even VR, and because the optics are so much closer to your retina, the resolution you need to get kind of a decent experience is actually significantly higher than what you would typically have from the smartphones, and that gets even worse as you go into contact lenses, right? So if you look to modular lens, that's even an order of magnitude higher than that. And then even tricks like foveation. So we do a lot of really smart things currently with the fields of view and all that. We trick the brain as much as we can, and even that requires data rates, a rendering capability, which is currently well above what the phones can do. So my suspicion is we'll always stay a little bit ahead. So if we want to have this really amazing experience, it's going to be edge rendered. We can do it. It's not easy. It's really not easy. We're nowhere near a final, consistent global solution, but we're getting there. So, but also I agree with Patrick that actually we need that hybrid, because sometimes you will not have this 5G edge cloud enabled system. What do you do then? You don't want to switch it off. You still want something decent. So,
sort of cascading back.
Exactly. Yeah.
If you have edge cloud, it's superior.
Exactly. Right.
If you don't, you do local rendering.
Dynamic, smart, split rendering is probably the way to go.
So is that a long-term problem or like a short, 5-year problem?
I think we formulate it as a short-term problem, but it probably requires some midterm solutions to that. Yeah, that makes sense. But it's a good question. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Great question.
Thank you for your presentation. It was really informative. I have a question about AR versus MR. So you mentioned, mixed reality, that's kind of an enhancement. Can you talk about that and how it's different from what we already are kind of used to or accustomed to as AR?
As AR?
Yeah.
Yeah, so AR today, most of the devices have a pretty limited field of view. And if you think if you're in VR, you have a big field of view, right? But you're completely occluded from the real world environment. So what we're able to do with the stereo color cameras now is bring that camera view into the bigger display and field of view. So you're really looking at the real world is coming through, but it's coming through the camera view, right? And then you can put augmentations over that layer. So it's a way to, you really need good latencies and a really optimized image processing pipeline and camera pipeline to do that, right? So we've been working really hard on that, but because you know if the latency isn't good, you're going to feel it, and it's not going to feel right. So it's a way to bring a little bit bigger form factors that have better thermal mitigation and power dynamics, and then bring that real world into your view with a much better field of view.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a I think it's a great question. Just a follow-up question, actually, if you permit me. So, do you consider haptics as well and kinesthetic as part of the mixed reality game?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're enabling hand tracking as well. So the interactivity is, I mean, thanks for pointing that out. Interactivity is such an important part of this experience, right? So, and if you can, not have extra hardware that you need to bring around with you, that's probably a better experience. So enabling hand tracking use case and functionality modality in the experience is important. So we've enabled hand tracking, which is using the front-facing cameras in the experience. But again, latency, so that when you grab something, a digital object with your hand, that digital overlay of your hand is moving when you move your hand so that it doesn't create cognitive dissonance. It's really important.
All right, cool, thank you.
Hello. So first of all, I feel my IQ has gone up about 5 points listening to you. Thank you for that. The question I have is, in 1987, our computer science professor would tell us AI is just around the corner. It's just about ready, right? And that was with Block's World and those kinds of things. So what is the problem that has been holding AI back that 5G in general and XR in particular would solve, do you think?
Can I take that?
Yeah.
All right. So, yeah, we can make that very technical. I think it's a great question because AI as a capability has been around for so long. But as most of these enabling technologies, it goes in these quantum leaps, right? So you have a decade, nothing happening. We call the winter of AI, and then suddenly comes a breakthrough. So we have, CNNs were invented, then GANs were invented. Now we are with the nerves and the radiant field functions. So it's really exciting stuff happening at the moment. But during the winter of AI, these decades where nothing happens, is actually where things consolidate. And the skill set trickles back into our industry. And this is where we get very active. We say, okay, right, so we got reinforcement learning in the early days. That was part of Release 8. For instance, we were thinking about how to do SON, self-organizing networking, in the 3G, 4G era. And I worked in France Telecom back then. And, we took essentially what the computer science folks had invented, brought it into telecom, took it then another 5, 10 years to really bring it to something where you could possibly deploy that. And during that time, the new revolution, as well as the years of GANs came around, right? So the generative adversary networks. And so I think that model, in my opinion, works really well. But of course, it takes time. It's a skill set question. Really, it's very important. And those of you who are co-founders or founders of startups, they know how difficult it is to hire somebody, even us. Good skill set. So skill set problem, educational problem, and then application problem. So you got all these long cycles, and we're not machines. It just takes I was teaching in King's for many years, so I know it takes a long time for people to understand new technologies. But now it's there. It's there, and I think that roadmap. So Ericsson today just released 200 new apps, AI apps, optimizing the RAN network. I think you guys will be very interested in that, actually. So it's coming together, and then. Coming to the other question, sorry, I'm bubbling long. You can see I've been
doing great.
I've been paid for many years to talk, so that's what I do. Apologies. Just very quickly. So The inverse question actually is an interesting question, is what can telecoms do for the AI field? And we do have probably the world's largest federated distributed infrastructure, if you think about it. Mobile phones, there are billions of them. Each of the phone can compute something with GNBs, RAN networks, etc. So we have a huge infrastructure out there which could really, bootstrap a lot of the AI capability in terms of federated learning, distributed learning, and bring out entirely new ways of actually doing AI. So and with that, I'm going to zip it. Sorry. Does it answer your question? That's the question. It does. Okay. Fantastic. Thank you.
Hi. Hello. Hey, the AR/VR devices typically is like headset devices, right? So I want to know like what are the challenges here involved in integrating the cellular modules, into the headsets because like the headsets are contacting the human, the face, especially the head area, right? So again, adding the 5G, the cellular modules to the AR/VR devices with the health hazards involved. So I wanted to know like how the manufacturers, the AR/VR device manufacturers were, having, what are the ways they resolve those problems, how they are going to, resolve those issues, yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky chemistry for sure because the form factors are definitely smaller. So you have to be very thoughtful in how you integrate 5G. One thing I think that the industry is really looking forward to is the the Red Cap Release 17, right? So you're going to have reduced transmit powers. You're going to have shorter slot cycles, things like that. So I think you're going to be able to and lower uplink downlink expectations on the bandwidth. So I think the modems will generate less power and less heat and less thermals, and that's going to be a big, I think, inflection point for this new category of devices when we get to that time frame. And I think it's like 24, 25. I don't know exactly off the top of my head, but maybe you do.
I would just always encourage more OEMs to come work with us and experiment with new ways of developing form factors and managing the RF. You've seen, I think Motorola did something that was like a wearable thing around the neck. We in previous work I've been involved with, we did experiments with where RF was being mounted, because as you want freedom of movement, but as you move around, you potentially your body can occlude the RF performance and things like that. So I think there's so many OEMs talking about this intersection of 5G and immersive technology. I would just try to encourage a little bit more aggressiveness in getting involved and not just talking about it, and seeing how we can innovate together to solve some of the problems that you point out.
So do you see any industry standards for defined to maintain those the rules, like how it will be like even if the manufacturers implement those stuff, so they should follow the industry standards, so they should not go beyond that particular TRP or TIS.
I think we do acknowledge in other sort of product categories I have a little bit of exposure to. I think we do acknowledge in this new world where we're trying to encourage a little bit more innovation and experimentation that we need to moderate the parameters with which we've typically governed wireless products with cellular phones, for example. So I think we're working through how to be a better partner to the ecosystem as well, and not be so rigid in some of the things that we require as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. And talk to us. I think this environment, as the first time I see, is a fantastic environment for you to play around and iterate your designs, and talk to us maybe later in the socials about what we can do, how we can help you.
Absolutely.
So hi, I was wondering maybe going off of this other question about AI and how that might actually be a middleware, a way of integrating some of the systems you're talking about, how that might affect your work, shorten actually the process, because it seems like you've got these people moving from one place to another, or different types of users coming into a scene, and you need to know and predict what they might be doing. How do you think that's going to affect your work?
I'll take that. Yeah.
Let's start.
I think it's a great question, and it's a very timely question, because I'm not sure how familiar you are with the with the OSI stack. So we're starting to think of actually having AI as a new layer, just as you have alluded to, because it is really now everywhere, northbound, southbound, and it's become very capable. And for that to happen, we need standards, AI standards. I think the telco industry has been so successful in driving standards, and of course we lose sometimes our competitive advantage, but we get skill. And that really has been defining our industry. In the AI world, you don't have standards, right? So if you talk to the big folks driving AI, they are not very keen of making their AI talk to each other. So if we were to succeed on that middle layer, which I think would be a successful exercise in the tech industry, we need to start driving very hard the standards agenda. We've started first baby steps, so I'm trying to evangelize quite a lot in Silicon Valley to the benefits of doing that, because we had 20 years of success in cellular to show them there is benefit in standardizing things. But also talking to NIST as an example, US government as well, to make sure we got a wide envelope there to drive that agenda. But I see a lot of benefit in doing this. Thank you for your question. Very good. Thank you.
Great talk, by the way. With the complexity of 5G and all these ecosystems, you have multiple applications, multiple suppliers, different complicated technology stacks, so on and so forth. So one of the key issues that I'm coming across now is interoperability. And I just read an article recently by Qualcomm about 5G network virtualization and interoperability. But the article pretty much just focused on interoperation for Open RAN. Are there any other initiatives to address 5G interoperability in the ecosystem beyond maybe just RAN? And could be core operations, could be between different types of 5G network suppliers? Because I see this almost as just as important as 5G security. Because if you have a network that doesn't operate, the security isn't really going to make that much a difference. So it's really becoming more and more of an issue as our solutions and our ecosystem becomes more fragmented and more complicated.
Great question.
I'm going to have to punt a little bit on this one, because I'm really not the standards guy and at Qualcomm. But I hate to put my colleague Andy on the spot, but but Andy might be more familiar. He sits in the front row right there, and he might be able to follow up with you on that one, at least from Qualcomm's perspective. So sorry I can't address that. But
I mean, interesting, if you look at our main standards body, which is called 3GPP, it's not called 5GPP, but 3GPP, and, actually all of that there is open and standardized, except maybe a few of the constituents, which are certain parts and the very kind of front haul, the different way how we do the front haul split, called lower layer split, and is not so strong on cloudification, and maybe not so much about external access to the RAN, which the O-RAN Alliance has taken care of. So there's a good synergy there. I'm not sure how if you have experience running business. So it's in my opinion, I have a few companies. My opinion is it is less a tech question, it's a scale question, right? So the question is, how do you scale this up such that it becomes a viable business proposition globally? And we can probably, we could hope that the startup comes up with a great idea to plug into the 3GPP ecosystem. They could do it, right? It's all open. You just go to 3gpp.org and you download the specs and you start developing your magic. You can do that. But we found often, more often than not, that it's really difficult to compete at scale for such, for such an important kind of technology constituent. So it's a difficult trade-off, but maybe we can discuss over a beer later on with standards folks. Yeah. But it's more open than you think. That's what I'm always saying. People think it's all closed and nobody can do anything. It's not true. Just go to it's all open. You can download it. You don't pay a dime.
Thank you.
I recognize that guy. I know.
Hi, Nigel.
Hello, Ali. How are you?
I'm doing well. Can you speak about what kind of innovation is coming out of T-Mobile today around AR, VR?
No.
So there is no innovation coming.
Talk about spaces now.
What do you expect me to say?
Talk about spaces.
No, yeah, no. the program that's probably of highest exposure and interest with us at the moment is the Qualcomm Snapdragon Spaces program, and we have an accelerator program internally where we're cultivating a bunch of third-party application developers who see the value that Qualcomm are putting behind the Spaces program. And we're piloting different we're trying to look at different use cases. So whether travel, whether training, whether industrial applications, with some of our accelerator partners to kind of prove out what Spaces is capable of doing. So that's kind of a program we've subscribed to, and we're using to try and uncover some use cases that we should start to back in both consumer and enterprise spaces as well. The other thing that I think I'm trying to do here at T-Mobile is that I mentioned some of these applications for healthcare earlier on. There's some great training applications as well. It's just kind of inside our culture here. There's things we can start to build and start to look at our own training programs and start to see how immersive technology can permeate some of the things that we do with our own staff as well. So I think, as well as looking at the business side and potential commercial applications and platforms with Qualcomm that we can sell to consumers, I'm also passionate about us starting to use some of these tools and technologies inside, and we have some initiatives going there to see how we can increasingly, I think you probably know, one of our corporate pillars is around increasingly digitizing customer experiences and being able to put T-Mobile in the hands of people at more points in their lives when they actually truly need us. And I think AR and VR technologies are another vehicle to be able to do those kind of things. So I'm excited about that too.
So besides leveraging external vendor technologies, is there anything that internally T-Mobile is innovating in AR and VR that would stand apart?
I think that, I don't want to say too much, but things like the edge compute that we talked about earlier on, we do believe in our network. We think our network's got the power to be able to provide the latency and the jitter and the throughput to enable some of these experiences. And, no man's an island. I mean, it is, you want to kind of isolate these partner relationships and say, what's T-Mobile doing on its own? I mean, I can't answer that. We are an ecosystem, and every part of this ecosystem has got to do its bit to accelerate and drive momentum in these new experiences, and we're not going to do it on our own. I mean, let's be real.
All right, thank you.
You guys do have a very incredible mid-band spectrum asset that I think is going to be serve you well for this XR future we're going into. Yeah.
So I'll ask a question while you guys think maybe some more. And folks in the back, feel free to walk up here to the mic. Oh, we got one? Oh, perfect. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, go right ahead, please.
Oh, yeah, I just had a question for, based on the experienced designer's perspective, is there like a certain expectation of simulation offered from like the network side to when we talk about like nanite or like streaming level of detail, these sorts of things that can give people that are working on the experience side a way to accurately appraise how things are going to go based off of network quality and things like that? Has anything like that been worked out with the game engine developers or anything like that?
Great question. I think so. Build a digital twin of the network so you could emulate your user experience. Yeah, we're on it. It's coming. And I think the ecosystem recognized this as one of the, maybe not the most important issue, but one of the great enablers to test next generation applications. So rather than wire things and try them out and, fail with that, build a digital twin of the network, try to understand how it really works with real propagation, real data, real headsets and kind of real networks, and then you can iterate your UX and your experience, your rendering experience, decide where do you want to do the split rendering, cut. Do you want to do 20% on the device, 80% on the cloud, all on the cloud or all on the device? It is coming. It's a fairly complex product, but I'm actually quite excited about this. Yeah. So just be patient a little bit, and we'll have something for you soon. Thank you.
Yes, please.
All right. So are the hyperscale cloud providers friend or foe? And I ask this because they all have their own platforms. They strongly encourage adoption at the highest levels of their proprietary platforms. the platforms are not interoperable. So if you build something on Azure, it doesn't run natively on GCP or on AWS. They all want their hardware stack or their software stack deployed into your edge, colo or edge cell site or whatever. And I'm just wondering, like, do you end up with a situation where you're either kind of fragmented and balkanized into these guys are Azure, like there's an Azure stack deployment back in the corner there, or is there some common protocol that we're going to use that's going to let workloads float across whatever hardware happens to exist at that edge location? It feels like the fragmentation and the proprietary nature of those platforms is completely at odds with like the example earlier of someone traveling internationally and having their applications continue to work even when they're out of their home region and things like that.
I'll be the first one to use the M word, the metaverse word, I guess.
I was waiting for that.
Who's gonna fail here? Yeah.
We believe in open as we move to this fourth wave of the internet. So we're building Snapdragon Spaces on OpenXR standards. So we believe it needs to be an open ecosystem. Interoperability is hugely important for where we're going. It basically is kind of another plane of your existence, right, that's going to exist. So as you enter these different 3D virtual worlds through any medium, headsets might be one way you enter, you need to be able to transverse between these worlds. Interoperability is extremely important. So we don't believe any one single vertical player should dominate the market, although we count all of these companies as partners and customers, and we're trying to support a horizontal ecosystem growth.
It's a great question. I think we need to differentiate between telco load and application load. So from a telco load, I can answer their friends because we believe in cloudification. We're very excited about this, the Cloud RAN portfolio, which is coming out, which is out there, and therefore we need, of course, the hyperscalers to help us to instantiate quite a lot of that load. Do we have means to commoditize them? We do, right? So you just go to VMware and you get your little virtualization scheduler, and you can schedule loads as you want across different providers. So we have the tools. In terms of application load, it's actually more a question to Timo. Then I don't really know because the hyperscalers, of course, own the relationship to the likes of Unreal Engine game providers. Yes. To the enterprise world. So, but on the other hand, the telcos, I worked in a telco for many years, don't have the sales channels to enact all that great ecosystem. So I think it will be a world where maybe on technology, the likes of Timo wouldn't like them to be in the game. But from a sales point of view, I think it might be a good opportunity. But you guys probably know better how to answer that, to be honest. So, but we need to distinguish telco load and application load. Up to you.
Nigel?
Over to you. Or to you, I don't know.
I honestly don't think I have anything to meaningfully add to that one. But standards. I mean, at some point, if we're going to drive scale here, and the commercial opportunity for all of us is there, then I think we all have a vested interest in making the end user experience the best it can possibly be, and that's going to require working together.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for sharing this great information. So I'm coming from the other side of the world, which is the enterprise and application. And thanks for sharing the M word. That's what I was thinking of.
Did you actually say it? Yeah, no.
I lose the bet. Last to get a beer, I guess.
I think the use cases and scenarios are amazing, but coming from the application development side of the world, so I run an innovation lab working with enterprises. It's very complex, and there are so many pieces. From the network side, from the device side. And when we are driving those use cases, it's difficult to get the support from the whole ecosystem. So what would be your advice for people like us who are fighting on the front, dealing with the customers in terms of advice or support I can get from this, wise people in the ecosystem which is out here?
Sorry, it wasn't clear to me exactly what part of the ecosystem you sit in?
So I run an innovation lab. So I work with automotive, manufacturing, retail, driving these use cases, what we are discussing out here. And there are a lot of challenges in the real deployments. There's
they call about science projects. No, we are not working on science projects.
Yeah.
We are actually delivering solution in the enterprise, and there are a lot of limitations, a lot of challenges which we are discussing out here. So is there any way to use this ecosystem to remove the resistance and move faster with those deployments, real-life deployments?
My one comment to that, I guess, would be like, don't start by trying to boil the ocean with everything that these platforms can do. If you can find one good use case with one good ROI, whether it's remote assistant or guided work instructions or something that has a provable ROI, just start with XR and then it grows from there. And I think then it snowballs. So if you can, we can talk after. We have a lot of, ISV partners, I'm sure. These guys do as well that you can probably, depending on what you're trying to get, the use case that we can point you to that have really good solutions already in the space.
Yeah, I think we're also at the very, we're doing the first baby steps to speak your language. Okay, I think that we come from a very bespoke world where giants talk to giants to make things happen. Now suddenly we're opening up. We're looking at the longer tail of innovation. Testimony is right here. You got that great space here to experiment. And of course, our common language is probably API. Okay, so therefore we are now learning as a telco ecosystem to open up our gear. Even you guys are learning to open up your gear to APIs, so you can speak the language. So we speak the language you have been speaking for the last 20 years, and we're just coming to grips with that. It's not easy, I think, because clearly we need to figure out who pays what. We haven't talked about monetization at all today.
That's my next question.
I thought I'd just throw this in because it really surprised me. We haven't touched that at all.
That's a happy hour topic.
Yeah, that's the other word, right? The other M word. So, so we need to still understand how this really works out. And but we're there. Ericsson committed to that. We acquired a company called Vonage for a whooping $6 billion. Okay, which is, I don't know how much EBITDA that was, but significant because we think very strategic about this. We want to help our customers to really tap into that innovation ecosystem, and we understood that we don't speak that language, so we acquire the language. So that's what we're doing. It was just approved literally maybe 2 months ago, but stay tuned. I think a lot will happen over the next 12 to 24 months, and if you're going to be in pole position, you're gonna fly. So listen what Timo is saying, what we're announcing, and Qualcomm. So yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, it reminds me a bit of, is it John Hankey, who's the head of Niantic? Yes. When I went down to the Niantic Lightship Summit, and he kind of articulated it this way, that we're at a very kind of, yes, that's great, there's all this renewed interest in this space. We're a very critical nature. There's a lot, I don't want to swear, but there's a lot we can do to screw this up. So what can we possibly do together to make this go right? That was his kind of question. And I came away from that conference thinking that's echoed in every kind of decision I start to take about what we do here as well. Is like, let's not just bandwagon this, use the M word frivolously. Let's just be thoughtful about what we do and try to work together as a community, as an ecosystem, because we could mess this up. Like, that would be really easy to do.
But we won't.
We won't.
We're going to make this amazing. So maybe I will ask a quick question around the monetization since you brought it up. And I think we did get a lot of submissions around ROI, revenue opportunities, and why we're all hesitant on claiming the killer app. It would be good to hear your perspective on some of those monetization opportunities, especially early on, and what's going to help push this forward.
So I'll start the conversation. I think there's a huge bubble, and as a co-founder of quite a few companies, I see two parts of the balance sheets: the top line and the bottom line. Right. So we do have bottom line opportunities, top line opportunities. One of the biggest bottom line opportunity, I think, is to reduce churn. And maybe not many of you know this, but as I worked in France Telecom for many years. It's a huge cost item. Churn is a very, very big cost item. You'll be surprised, compared to the cost of base stations, I don't want to say it's negligible, but it is really. I don't know how your balance sheet looks like. I need to look up your K10 filings, but in general, it is really, really an important thing to look at. Now, you did a great strategy. You got mid-band spectrum at half price through the acquisition. I thought it was super smart. So therefore, you have an argument here. You engaged with SpaceX on something really new. Clearly, that will drive. Now you're doing the XR really on the ball. So I think that's a great opportunity. It's not really monetizable directly, but you're definitely going to, I think, get a lot of savings down there. Top line is more difficult because our industry has been very ARPU driven. And I think it's a good time now to rethink that a little bit and start thinking, what can we do maybe with the emergence of Web 3.0, blockchain stuff, Is there something we can start rethinking the way how we monetize infrastructure? I just published a blog actually on the Ericsson blog, if you want to look it up. If you Google Metaverse 5G blockchain, you'll find it. One thing I observed, I worked in blockchain for many years, so I did my own ICO and all that, so I know this world really well. So pay attention to the blockchain world. So, look at the metaverse. Let's say take a proper Web 3.0 metaverse called Sandbox as an example, right? Sandbox is based on, uses a token called Sand, which is based on ERC20 token of the Ethereum blockchain, okay? So this is how they have constructed. If you look at Fortnite, it's an epic metaverse, or Roblox, or Minecraft. The charging there, how it's being done, is through a Visa plugin or a PayPal plugin on top. So what we do in the traditional world is we have traditional infrastructure providers. They're all here on stage. Then we do have the metaverse developers doing their magic, and then later on they see, oh wow, this is really successful. How can I monetize that? So they start putting in the PayPal, and then everybody's kind of fighting over that. The other side, the Web 3.0 ecosystem, has inverted that. Okay, they build essentially the monetization aspect, the tokens, the wallets, the exchanges, the NFTs, the value layer in between the blockchain layer, so the infrastructure layer, and the application. In other words, if an application succeeds and really takes off, it automatically creates value because we have built it natively into the whole thing, right? And therefore, I'm inviting you to start rethinking how can we rethink telecoms in general, and maybe that's in 5G evolution 6G game, right? But I think if we move slowly away from the ARPU model and start thinking more creatively how to monetize that, I think then we can really succeed as an ecosystem. Then you will have enough money to reinvest again into densification, buy more spectrum, and the sky's the limit, if at all, actually, with your partnership with SpaceX. Anyway, so this is my view. I think we really need to start rethinking a little bit. Yeah.
Excellent. Patrick?
I kind of assume that question is more oriented towards the operator perspective.
Not necessarily.
Oh, okay. Because, maybe I'll repeat a little bit of what I said about ROI. So if you kind of think about the customer's ROI, and a lot of the ROIs are more obvious in enterprise than consumer, obviously. But if you think about the customer ROI, and then what we're trying to do is reduce some of the friction by enabling the devices, enabling the ecosystem through Spaces, so that you can come up with more turnkey offerings, maybe offer different security as a service or private 5G network as a service, or incremental value that you can bundle and provide into the ecosystem. But I don't know, maybe the operator perspective is better here.
I think we're trying. To be honest, we're trying to figure it out. I mean, it's we're doing tests on different types of use cases to try and see what things are most attractive to consumers. Clearly, getting people into another kind of parallel world and being able to experience new things, trade new types of assets in there. Advertising opportunities. Once you've got people in these immersive environments, what are the other things that we can, surround them with? Whether the compute technology is something that people want to dial up or dial down to be able to enhance and strengthen performances or resolutions and things like this. I mean, there's a whole. I just think it's just wide open right now, and I think we're all possibly the reason why the momentum is steady is we're just trying to figure out all of our roles in this space, and whilst it's exciting, we have to pay the bills at the end of the day as well. So I think that's the kind of the $1 million question or $1 billion question is how we can do this. But I think there's massive opportunities here.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you. Any last questions from the audience? Oh, please.
Thanks a lot.
Amazing panel, a lot of great information, and we touched amazing topics. I love the monetization models. And my question, Nigel, to you is, when we talk about network as a service, by default, you're talking about, oh, I should be able to get some dedicated bandwidth for the kind of operations that I want to perform. Today we know that depending on the saturation and the traffic on the network, the speeds can go up and down. So how are you looking at monetizing on AR, VR? What are the kind of different monetization models that you're thinking of, and how they would be beneficial to the consumer and the enterprises?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, we're still trying to figure these things out, so I don't think I have a clear answer to you, and if I did, I wouldn't tell you anyway. But I think really trying to get under the cover around what people really want and what's most valuable to them around performance, latency, throughput, resolution, and how they want to manage that world, and like thinking about things like security and identity and that kind of stuff. We're just looking at all of those attributes and aspects as being things that, should we play a part in being able to help people, get better performance, but also feel safer in these new worlds. So I think we're exploring those things. I think the other aspect is I hinted to is the compute component. We've all talked about it today. There's some questions about, where are things rendered. In my ideal world, this would be like super thin clients, super affordable, and everything is rendered on the edge and just streamed and decoded to the device. We have POCs in-house today where we're trying to understand, what that balance should be. How can we get cost out of the hardware to enable the most affordable, accessible types of experiences to people, but also deliver most performance. And then maybe if you're short on performance, can you buy extra processing power, for example, from hyperscalers or for us or whatever it is, to enhance the performance when you need it. So that what are those kind of dynamics and variables that will mean most to people at various points, and are there opportunities to create products around enhancing or good enough experiences in this space?
Okay. Thank you. All right, I always get to ask the last question, and clearly we have a room here of innovators and technology enthusiasts, and so my question to you is, what's your call to action to this group, and how we're going to move this forward?
For me, it's very simple. Just do it, right? Iterate. That's what we do. Just do it. Engage with us. Yeah.
Great. Patrick?
Yeah, I would say don't get caught up in analysis paralysis. It's important to be ready, and you're going to iterate your strategy as you go. But I think if you believe that this is going to happen, right, and I think a lot of people do believe that, then it's important just to jump in, and if you need to learn as you go, but don't wait.
And I would say, look at this beautiful space that's all around you that we've built. To my point earlier, there's a lot of talk, and sometimes I wish there was a bit more action from some of the partners that we talk to. We've built this fantastic space that's open to all of you to come here and experiment and play with us. And I just urge you to, if you need a partner to work through things with you, then Erin and the team here have built. We've put our money where our mouth is. Challenge you to do the same.
Awesome. Well, you took my answer. You set that up perfectly. So absolutely, I want to give a plug here for the 5G Hub and to innovate with us. This is obviously an incredible facility. Our goal is to have the latest technology and the support from T-Mobile SMEs and our partners here to help bring those POCs, innovations to life. So go to our website, techexperience.com. You can submit your project there, and we look forward to working with you here at the 5G Hub. And then we do have one more speaker series here for the year. Yes, we are still in summer, even though it's October. We're forever in summer. So our last speaker series of the year is on the 18th for 5G and gaming. So hopefully you guys can join us back here on the 18th. Again, you can register on techexperience.com. So with that, let's give a round of applause to our incredible panelists. Mischa, Patrick, and Nigel, fabulous job. And to our audience, excellent questions. Thank you very much. And please stick around for some networking. The bar is open. We still have some food. And enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
You.